A woman takes a summer job in a remote village to find some peace, unaware that the people want more from her than her professional skills. A hooded man walks through a forest and soon reaches a road where a bus awaits. Upon seeing him, the driver heads into the vehicle and together they drive off. Elsewhere, Irina throws out items from her apartment. She also learns that she wasn't accepted into the summer job she applied to. The next day, her teacher notices Irina is unable to focus, so he calls her and asks what production costs are. Bitterly, she claims that she doesn't care, since companies focus more on costs than keeping people happy. She thinks that their society steals their freedom with the promise of enjoying their last breaths as pensioners without guaranteeing that they'll survive that long. Her rant puts tension in their class. Later, Irina's friend Mia tells her to stop blaming herself for her misfortunes. Instead, she should focus on her summer job, but Irina reveals that the company turned her down and she kicked out her ex-boyfriend, so she has to find another way to pay rent. After school, Irina goes on a jog, unaware of a stranger watching her. He later watches her in her apartment, but when she looks, he's not there anymore. While Irina showers, someone rings the doorbell. When she checks, she only finds a letter outside. Soon, Irina boards the bus headed to Kyrsyä after receiving an invitation to the village to escape from the busy life. While waiting, she talks to Mia on the phone, who thinks that the trip is ridiculous. Irina defends that it's a summer job where she'll be mentored while working for a textile manufacturer. During this, the strange man is also on the bus watching her. Irina falls asleep during the trip and wakes up upon arriving outside. The driver compliments the strange man on his nice catch. When Irina steps out, the strange man introduces himself as Parity. He's also heading to Kyrsyä, which is a 10 kilometers walk away, so the two walk together. On their way, she expresses how she couldn't find anything about the place on the internet. Pretty assures her that she's not going into some hillbilly village. They chose to hunt and grow their food to be friendly to Mother Nature. If Irina wants peace, then she shouldn't disturb nature as well. Soon they arrive at the village where Maya and her daughter Maria greet them. The mother shares that Maria also lived in the city but returned after getting tired of the big world. Another villager, Siri, invites Irina to eat, but she asks to put away her belongings first. Maria's grandmother complains that Irina doesn't know that in Rome she must do as the Romans do. Maria assures the old woman that they'll only take a few minutes before leading the guests to the room. Still, the grandmother complains that the big world didn't do the young woman well, but she reassures her that their guest will learn inside. Maria takes Irina to the room that they'll share. She advises the woman to listen to the elder, since they've lived longer and know how to behave. Irina argues that the world constantly changes, but her companion claims that it's not like that here. Soon, Irina joins the villagers for a meal. Before eating, the grandmother leads the prayer, thanking how they're free from men who defy their creator and the world's oppression. They also thank the opportunity to live as a family, as they've accepted that they don't need whatever they cannot do. After the meal, Irina walks with Maria, noting how she liked how their prayer focused on being thankful instead of Jesus. Maria comments that most people can't appreciate anything nowadays without satisfying their ego. She tours Irina around the village, pointing to another house where a man named Mono lives, though she asserts that he prefers to be alone. Maria also takes her to the goats, from whom they get wool to manufacture. Irina likes the idea of working hands-on instead of studying theories and marketing at school. Later, Irina steps out when she hears noises from Melina's house. This creeps her out, so she heads back to her room. In the morning, Irina checks her phone, but finds that she can't get a signal in the village. During breakfast, Siri suddenly asks about her family. Irina shares that her parents divorced 6 years ago because they didn't love each other anymore, but the grandmother insists that love doesn't end, it just changes. Irina adds that her father has 2 sons with his new wife, so the grandmother comments that her family must be fertile. When Irina shares that she isn't in a relationship, Pretty explains to the elders that many youth study before having kids, much like the previous one who took a job there, Hannah Kyrsyä. Irina asks about her, but Maya says they don't know where she is after she left since her summer job starts later in the week. Irina is tasked to help Party gather mushrooms before going. She notices a young woman cradling a baby. Purdy explains that the woman Helia hasn't recovered after her baby became sick. The two then go to the forest where Party teaches her. Passing by Helia, whose baby is actually a doll, while Savory shouts in anger. Irina grabs her cardigan outside, then finds Maria cleaning blood from herself while Mana is chained beside her. Horrified, the woman runs into the forest without shoes on. Irina Irina hurries away as Severi and his friends search for her. After getting far, Irina finds her phone in her cardigan and tries calling for help. However, she hears Severi getting close, so she runs while hunting her down. Yolmari teases Severi for not getting his bride because he doesn't pray. Severi punches his friend for this just as the other men report where Irina is heading to. Elsewhere, the woman gets knocked out by a hooded figure while unconscious. She dreams about the villagers watching as Mana kills another Irina. When she wakes up, she finds a blind woman who thinks that she's Hannah. Irina realizes that the woman is Kyrsyä's mother, and Kyrsyä, whose eyes were plucked out and put in a jar around her neck. Irina asks if she killed her daughter. So Kyrsyä defends that Kyrsyä was born with many abnormalities which they accepted until she started to belittle their lifestyle. Kyrsyä got ideas after Maria returned and taught her about society. It came to a point where Kyrsyä only wanted to improve their village but didn't care about them, so Kyrsyä did what she needed to. However, the villagers thought it was wrong to waste life as she did. Suddenly they hear Yolmari and Severi close by, so Irina lies that she's Hannah and the villagers are accusing her of hiding Severi's new bride. When Kyrsyä argues that they won't harm her, Irina promises to help the woman return to the village if she helps her. Finally, the men arrive and tell Kyrsyä that Irina might send the police to Kyrsyä, and Kyrsyä claims that Irina hasn't been there. Then backs Severi to take her back to the village. She insists that her daughter wanted to destroy the village, but the men refused since nature hasn't eaten her eyes. They believe that the eyes are the window to the soul, therefore if nature doesn't want to consume hers, then she's still impure. To prove her worth, Kyrsyä puts down her shriveled eyeballs on the ground, which a rodent approaches. However, it doesn't eat them, so the men walk away. The rodent climbs onto Irina's hand, who's hiding in Kyrsyä's tent. This makes her flinch, which the men hear before they can investigate, and Kyrsyä eats her own eyes to prove that nature can still forgive her. Disgusted, Severi just orders the woman to bring Irina back, then they'll discuss if she can be welcomed home after they leave, and Kyrsyä insists on finding Irina, unaware that she's already talking to her. Irina wonders why she'd helped the villagers, so when Kyrsyä insists that she'll be forgiven because they still love her, Irina then asks what will happen to Severi's bride after she gives him a child, so Kyrsyä assumes that they'll cut out what he means, so Yolmari answers that it's making children. Quickly Severi hits them for saying that Irina disagrees with this, but Severi insists that it is the truth before things escalate. Purdy urges the man to leave them alone. After they leave, Maria expresses her fondness for Severi, so Irina sarcastically comments that her companion should get together with him that night. As Irina reads in their room, she gets annoyed at how the lamps are waning in and out. Maria explains that their electricity isn't consistent there, but their electrical man is doing his best. When Irina still complains about it not being enough, Maria wonders what they do in the city when faced with problems. Irina knows that they get educated and motivated, but when someone can't do their job well, they find someone else who can. Maria believes they'll do well if they love their work, but her companion argues that most people don't like what they do for a living. The guest complains about people who expect society to provide for them since she believes that everyone is responsible for themselves. This makes Maria ask about those who can to survive without help. Irina clarifies that there are treatments for their condition, but if they can't recover, they're hospitalized so they don't drift among the rest. Later that evening, Irina dreams about a pale-faced young woman with a missing eye. She follows her to the attic where the woman introduces herself as Kyrsyä. She points to the bar nearby where her mother is and asks Irina to help her. Kyrsyä then touches the other woman's cheeks and suddenly reaches around her throat, threatening to kill her as her mother did to her if she doesn't help. The next day, Irina notices Severi and Yolmari exit the barn where Kyrsyä said her mother is, so she sneaks in. Inside she finds the place empty. The two men suddenly return, so Irina asks them where Kyrsyä's mother is. The men laugh as they revealed that Kyrsyä is dead, but she didn't move on due to unresolved things. Severi adds that Kyrsyä was drowned after her mother got tired of her, so her soul wants to teach her mother a lesson. On the third, Irina asks where Kyrsyä's mother is. What Severi corners her. Fortunately, Siri intervenes to take Irina to her summer job. The woman later began spooling pom-poms, which Irina thinks is an activity suited for kindergarteners and mental institution patients. Siri knows that their work is precious as they bind the threads like how nature binds men and women together. This prompts the women and Pretty to chant about their belief that love spun from Kyrsyä binds the soul to its righteous ground. Creeped out, Irina storms off as the others follow her. Irina calls them fools for thinking that she'd spend her summer making pom-poms. While she rants, she doesn't notice the noise from Anna's barn. Suddenly someone breaks out of the cabin and Irina is shocked to finally meet Melino, who tackles her while the others merely watch. Severi and Yolmari arrive and remove Mana from their guest. Frightened, Irina crosses to the axe that Severi dropped, but Melino frees himself from the men and grabs her again as the man attempts to remove her clothes. Maria causes attention, revealing herself to him to distract him. Mona chases after Maria while the shaken Irina cries. Maya explains that Mona was a strong child, so he's been producing their electricity through hard labor. It keeps him busy and out of trouble. Seeing them not bothered by what happened, Irina calls them sick and decides to leave. However, Priti reveals that the next boss doesn't leave until tomorrow, so Irina has no choice but to wait. Later, Maria finds Irina trying to use her phone again, but with no luck. She gives her tea, but Irina asks her to leave her alone. When Maria notes that they don't let sad people be alone, the woman sarcastically points out that they lock up mentally disabled people instead. Maria reminds her how men are awful in the city, but Irina still wants to go home. As they head back to the house, they find Sverre and the Almari wrestling on the ground. Seeing this, Irina wonders if they're secret lovers, but Maria defends that they just love each other because they're all family. Suddenly Irina feels dizzy as the villagers gather around her, including the bus driver having mixed something in her tea. Maria holds on to Irina, promising her that the village is where she will be loved. Finally Irina collapses and Priti declares that Sverre will give her a baby, so Kyrsyä will have a new beginning. Later, Irina is dressed in white as she's being forced to marry Sverre. She yells that she didn't go to Kyrsyä to get married, but Sverre reminds her that she came to work and that a woman's job is to bear children. Hearing this, Irina calls the villagers inhuman for forcing her into this and for how they treat Mona. Sverre gets pissed at her rant, so he approaches the woman, but Siri reminds him that he shouldn't touch her until they're married. Sverre argues that they should have prepared his bride by now, so he tries to grab Irina. This leads Siri to hit him over the head, which causes everyone else in the room to stand, recalling Priti's prediction of the bull that defends the bird. Siri realizes that she just did that for Irina, therefore the younger woman must choose to stay or leave. Because of this, they let her go, so Irina runs off. Which mushrooms are poisonous? Suddenly Irina hears a horn in the distance and Priti explains that it's from their hunters. He shares that the horn attracts animals to make them easier to hunt. Irina scoffed at the idea of charming the animals before killing them, but Priti argues that it is more compassionate. That afternoon Irina joins Maria in the sauna, where her companion confesses that she left the city after having a miscarriage. She was scared of becoming corrupted, so she returned to the village. Maria learned that people from the city can't coexist with nature, and Irina agrees since most don't appreciate what's around them. Maria then asks why Irina accepted their invitation, so she admits that she needed to escape and think things through. She starts ranting about her ex-boyfriend, but Maria shushes her as Mauno gets excited with that kind of talk. Curious, Irina wonders about Mauno and Maria admits that he's good looking. This makes her think that Maria is in a relationship with him, and the woman rushes out in embarrassment. As they head back, they hear grunts from Moana's cabin, so Maria tells Irina to go home alone before heading inside the cabin. Just then the hunters finally returned and Irina sees them happily gutting a raccoon. This bothers her. The next day Irina dreams about being in the forest cradling a baby while the hunters approach her holding their weapons. Suddenly blood seeps from the baby's cloth, so she checks and finds the dead raccoon in her arms. That morning Irina swims in the pond but finds two men watching her. Fortunately they leave her alone. Meanwhile Maya, Siri, Percy and their grandmother are in their chapel. Maya worries for her daughter, but Siri reminds her that Maria has a great sin to overcome. Maya defends that her grandchild would have suffered more if it were still alive. When Siri doubts it, the mother challenges her to check with someone named Kyrsyä. Suddenly Priti predicts that their migrant bird will be forced to do something, but a bull will defend her. The bird will then choose to leave and the bear will help her decide. He declares that Irina will lead them into change, but the grandmother worries about inviting outsiders into the village. Maya assures her that they've learned not to talk about babies, so suddenly since this scared Hannah, instead they'll have Sverre charm Irina, so she chooses to stay. Later Maria points Irina to Sverre and the Almari, whom the newcomer recognizes as the man who watched her in the pond. Changing the topic, Irina wonders why Priti didn't join the men during their hunt, so Maria explains that everyone has their tasks, like how she teaches the young lynx of the village. Irina finds this odd since there are no kids around. The man approached them and Sverre comments that he's glad to see Irina, as women nowadays aren't willing to do women's work. The Irina asks her tongue so she can't report the villagers. Getting an idea, Irina suggests that the bride will head to the road, so Kyrsyä agrees to take her there to find the woman. Suddenly Irina's phone rings as Mia is calling her. She answers the call while pretending to be Hannah and listing what happened to her in Kyrsyä. This doesn't fool Kyrsyä, however, so she approaches the frightened woman. Realizing who she is, the confused Mia gets suspicious at what's happening just as Kyrsyä grabs Irina and cuts out her tongue. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.